Hello, internet tiny house lovers and Airbnb hosts and renters all around the world. My name is Rose Crabtree, my company is Pocket Mansions, and I'm here to tell you why the city of Seattle has shut down my tiny house Airbnb. Alright, so what happened? I have been renting my tiny house as an Airbnb for over a year, so that means that people come from all over the country, all over the world, they come stay at my house for a couple nights, and that's about what happens. I have been depending on that as my sole source of income for almost a year now, and the city of Seattle called me about 2 weeks ago and said, shut down your Airbnb now, which was, pretty hard since people were in it at the time. So they came out the next day and gave me 30 days before I needed to stop renting my house immediately. Their reasoning behind it was that no one is allowed anywhere in Seattle to rent something, short-term or vacation rental, that was not permitted and built to code as a structure. That is the reasoning behind why I can no longer rent it. So I will be moving my tiny house outside of the jurisdiction of Seattle. In Seattle alone, we have hundreds of rentals that are tiny houses, RVs, Airstreams, yurts, houseboats, all sorts of different things that are not considered structures. And right now, new legislation is being drafted that will affect all of these people. So this is why I'm talking about it. Alright, so what can we do about this and what legislation am I talking about? On June 1st, which was just a couple days ago, City Council member Tim Burgess has drafted this legislation. He's sponsoring the legislation, and it is showing what they are going to do about Airbnb and other renting internet platforms. Because basically what happened is there was an explosion of short-term rentals all over Seattle, and other cities around the country has already come up with regulations for this. And so they have drafted new legislation, and I'll put a link to that underneath this so you can read all about it. And then they will actually be regulating it. Right now, nothing is being regulated because it just exploded so fast, and all of it, violates local codes, but they would prefer to regulate it instead of trying to go shut down thousands of rentals. So basically what I'm asking is not anything in the legislation itself to really be changed, so much for unconventional dwellings such as my own and hundreds of others that Seattle residents take care of and rent and depend on, that all of those unconventional dwellings have a path to compliance as well, instead of just being shut down. Because right now, the only structures that this legislation will cover and will give a path to compliance are ones that were built to housing code. And the yurts and the tents and all these other little things, they're not going to cut it. So below you will see information about the legislation if you'd like to read it. You'll see a letter that I've drafted that anybody can sign that's a Seattle resident and send to Tim Burgess. And you will also see the Seattle Council meeting that is happening on June 15th. This is the first time for public comment on this draft. So now is the time to talk about this. If we don't talk about it now and this legislation gets passed, it'll be insanely difficult to try and overturn it. So the time is to put in what we need in this legislation as well. And even if you don't have an unconventional dwelling, you are just an Airbnb host, you should come as well, because there's a lot in this legislation that will affect you as well. So anyone that hosts within Seattle or is a resident in Seattle and would someday like this option for yourself, it affects everyone. And then even people outside of Seattle. This is the first city in Washington that is going to regulate Airbnb, and that will ripple out to everyone in Washington as a precedent. So now is the time to talk about this and talk about what we want. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is closing small businesses. All of these little short-term vacation rentals that are super fun and interesting to stay in are Seattle residents, and a lot of them long-term Seattle residents that have found this as a way to be able to afford the skyrocketing cost of living in the city. That's what this is about. So please show up to support small business owners and entrepreneurs in Seattle. Thank you for watching.